Recently, Kotaku reported on a GameStop policy called the Circle of Life. A system of 4 pillars, which are pre-orders, power-up reward subscription, used game sales, and trade-ins. Anything else sold will actually hurt that quota. Each store is given different quotas. The example given was that if your quota was 30% used game sales and you did $1,000 worth of transactions, then you better have sold $300 worth of used games. So if you went in and bought a new game that you didn't pre-order and had nothing to trade in and didn't renew a power-up reward subscription, that sale hurt the COL score, and therefore they have to push more pre-order, memberships, and used sales or trade-ins, which has resulted in employees flat out lying to customers. If you asked for a new copy of a game, you would be told that either new copies were for pre-orders only, or they were out of stock, so that way that new sale didn't hurt their COL score. Because not only do the stores have quotas, the employees all have their own COL scores as well. Employees are even afraid to sell new hardware because they don't want that massive hit on their COL score. Using the previous example, if someone comes in and buys a new PlayStation Pro for $400 and 2 new games for $120, you only have $480 left to make that 30% used game sale quota. If someone comes in and buys a new 3DS for $200, then you're screwed, as you'll be $20 shy of that $300 in used game sales that you need to make. While it started last year, just in time for the holiday season where most new game releases and new hardware sales happen, it has existed in other forms beforehand, and any of us that have shopped at GameStop know this. We've all been asked about pre-ordering. We've all been asked to become power-up reward members. We've all been asked if we wanted it used as it was cheaper. Years ago, GameStop employees even told me that there was a quota for how many pre-orders they needed to make. And while they would get a talking to for not making it, there was an understanding that you could not make a customer pay for something they did not want. That logic now seems to be out the door and is no longer acceptable. As customers become more mindful of their money, they will not spend what they don't have or don't want to. Therefore, sales will be hurt, and it doesn't help when their competitors are giving better deals than them. I recently bought World of Final Fantasy for $25 through Amazon as they were doing a promotion with Destructoid where they gave out a promo code for $25 off when the game was $50. And at time of writing, Amazon and GameStop are selling the game new for $35. But while GameStop says that a new copy is $35, it's not available, but a used copy is for $33 or $30 if you're a power-up reward member. How convenient, but it's not really much of an incentive to buy it used now, is it? Best Buy also has other deals on games, as does Target and Toys R Us. But those stores have one thing over GameStop. They don't sell just one type of thing. They sell many other types of things. GameStop is a gaming pawn shop. That's all they are. None of this is new, by the way. Many other companies have quotas. When I lived in Florida, I worked at a call center. While the call center had many different programs that I worked on, some of them good, others hellish landscapes of torture. One program was for a company called Go Apply. It was calling people to confirm information they submitted to apply for home loans. None of it was supposed to be cold calling, but since people were doing so well, the call center created a dummy list where you would be put on if your percentage rate was too high. That way they didn't have to pay your commission in addition to your hourly rate, and then they would talk to you about your rate being low. Although they wouldn't talk to me about my percentages that much, because when they did, I would say, hey, maybe put me on the good list and not the shit list like you've been keeping me on. And then they would drop it. Then there was American Greetings, where customers would call in to cancel their e-card subscription. The job was to save the account from cancellation, and your quota was a 20% save rate. So out of 100 calls, you could have 80 cancels, but then you would have to save at least 20 accounts. At 20%, you would not make any commission in addition to your hourly rate, but commission maxed out at 25%. So out of 100 calls, there was no reason to save more than 25. And this is where I can empathize with GameStop employees. I could save 20 accounts out of 100, get ready to go home, and that one call comes in that wants to cancel. Now I'm under 20%. You have no idea how much one customer can screw things up for you until you work at a job where there's quotas. It was such a terrible program that there's at that there was one guy who was actually a regular cheater. He would mark cancels as saves. He would tell the customer he's canceling the account, but then he would save the account. Or he would mark cancels as neutral, so this way they didn't count against him. He eventually got fired, but it took a long time for that to happen. So yeah, when quotas like that are imposed on employees, they do some seriously underhanded tactics. And where I currently work, I'm mostly doing data entry with some IT work when it's called for and other behind the scenes odd jobs. I work in the background for a majority of the time, so I'm not actually looked at when it comes to quotas, because mine cannot be gauged correctly. However, my coworkers are. They work on the floor and have to make a minimum of 85%, which is actually extremely easy. But there's no incentive for them to do more than that. When the directors, who are people above my manager, are demanding more than 100%, which is possible but it shouldn't be pushed, the floor employees would push back by doing 85%, because there was no incentive. They weren't getting paid more for doing over 100%. A director wanted one person to be written up for doing the minimum required to make an example out of them. The employee took the write-up to human resources, told them that he's doing the minimum required of him, and looking up proof for it was easy as everything is tracked by a computer, and then the write-up was tossed out. He eventually transferred to another department, and that director who wanted him written up was not only a moron but an asshole, because when he was around he would threaten to fire our shift manager, who eventually got so pissed off at him said, "You want to fire me? Fine, I quit." And that shift manager, he was a good guy too, and I felt bad for him. But that director was fired in an extremely humiliating way. Essentially, the vice president of the facility had all the directors in the room. There was a problem. He said, "I'm leaving for 15 minutes, and when I come back, you all better have answers." That director was the only person who didn't have the answer, so therefore, he was the problem. You can't expect nor can you force a customer to shop how you want them to shop. Customers do not like being pressured into buying something because they will push back, and if pushed enough, they will take their business elsewhere. There were 4 times when I was looking for a new car. I went to a Ford and Mitsubishi dealership. The 2 salesmen there were very pushy even when I said all I wanted was information. They pushed to the point of me leaving and not going back. The other 2 times, one was a Chevy dealership and the guy was very helpful. I took his card and I considered going back there. But I didn't, because after careful consideration, I wanted an all-wheel drive car and settled on a Subaru. And while I was very apprehensive, the salesman there did not pressure me at all and I bought the car. But that's how you sell. You do not push the sale, you guide it. You tell them the pros and cons. Give them the information they need. You tell them how much it's going to cost, because you gotta make a customer feel like they're in control of the sale, as they'll be more willing to buy that way. But if you start pushing for that sale by saying things like, "Okay, let's get started. Oh, how many do you want to buy?" If you're automatically assuming that there's going to be a sale, that customer will back out so fast your head will spin. My mother hates it when a store clerk at a clothing store follows her around saying, "Oh, that's nice, that's a good one, that one is on sale, that's cheaper with our card, blah 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 blah." She's walked out of stores without buying a thing because she hates people pressuring her into buying stuff. All customers do. If a store employee is going to approach me in the store, the only thing they better say is, "How can I help you today?" or if there's anything you're looking for, and then I may say, "Yes, do you have?" or "No, I'm fine, I'm just browsing." But you also cannot expect an employee to do more than what's required of them without an incentive. Putting fear in them by saying, "This is your quota, do it or you're fired," only causes them to worry. It lowers morale, and it leads to mistakes, and mistakes can be very costly. Like at my job, when the floor employees make a mistake, it comes to me, and I'm tasked with fixing it, so that way the customer does not know the employees on the floor screwed up by either selecting the wrong item or grabbing something that was damaged. And this circle of life thing that Gamestop is implementing is proof that they are dying. As if buying out ThinkGeek, selling used cell phones, making a section in store for figures and collectibles, stocking Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh cards wasn't proof enough. Gamestop is refusing to compete with its competitors. Walmart, Target, and Best Buy are not only competing amongst each other, they're competing with Amazon, the biggest and most successful online retailer. The former three will price match each other and Amazon. Even Toys R Us will too, and why is that? Because they want your money and will gladly take a loss if it means your money isn't going to a competitor. Toys R Us may have sold a game for $30 instead of the usual $60, but better to make $30 instead of nothing. And that's where GameStop really truly fails. If GameStop is selling a used game for $50, but Walmart has new copies for $30, GameStop will not discount the game to $25. They stand firm at $50. So they would rather make no money instead of some money. And if you're not going to undercut your competition, you're not going to stay in business for long, as you would stay in business longer if you can recoup some loss than take all the loss. Refusing to adapt is what caused companies like Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, and Borders to be gone because they refused to adapt. Kodak and BlackBerry are shells of their former selves because they took too long to adapt. Sears and Kmart are going the way of the dodo because of a refusal to adapt. As other retailers fiercely compete with each other to get people's business, GameStop planting their feet firmly in the ground will only cause them to be gored in the ass by the bull that is consumer demands.